On February 18th, a few minutes after noon, Jefferson Davis stood on the steps of the Alabama State House at Montgomery and took the oath of office as President of the Provisional Confederate States of America. The crowds cheered, wept, sang "Farewell to the Star-Spangled Banner" and "Dixie," a minstrel tune written by a Northerner. He was brittle, nervous, often unable to sleep, and partly blind in one eye. Accustomed to being obeyed, he scorned the bargaining that made democratic government work. Sam Houston said he was as cold as a lizard and ambitious as Lucifer. Like Lincoln, he was a Kentuckian, the son of an itinerant farmer. But he had been educated at West Point, fought in Mexico, and served as Secretary of War. As senator from Mississippi, he resisted secession as long as he could. But when his state withdrew from the Union, he headed home to his plantation, Briarfield, south of Vicksburg. He and his wife, Verena, were there, clipping roses in the garden, when word came that he had been elected president.
Reading that telegram, he looked so grieved that I feared some evil had befallen our family. After a few minutes, he told me, as a man might speak of a sentence of death.
Upon my head were showered smiles, plaudits, and flowers. But beyond them I saw troubles innumerable. Jefferson Davis.
The Confederate Constitution was almost identical to the United States Constitution, but it gave the president a line-item veto, a 6-year term, and it outlawed international slave trading. The Confederate cabinet met for the first time in a hotel room. A sheet of stationery pinned to the door marked the president's office. "Where will I find the State Department?" a visitor asked Robert Toombs, Secretary of State. "In my hat, sir, and the archives in my coat pocket."
Our new government is founded upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man. Vice President Alexander Stephens.
God forgive us, but ours is a monstrous system. Like the patriarchs of old, our men live all in one house with their wives and their concubines, and the mulattoes one sees in every family exactly resemble the white children. All the time they seem to think themselves patterns, models of husbands and fathers. Mary Chestnut.
Mary Chestnut and her husband James, a former United States Senator from South Carolina, moved among the highest circles of the Confederacy and were close to Jefferson Davis and his wife. Mary was subject to depressions and nightmares, for which she sometimes took opium. Now she too began to keep a diary.
This journal is intended to be entirely objective. My subjective days are over.
The impression produced by the size of his extremities and by his flapping and wide projecting ears may be removed by the appearance of kindliness, sagacity. The nose itself, a prominent organ, stands out from the face with an inquiring, anxious air as though it was sniffing for some good thing in the wind. The eyes, dark, full, and deeply set, are penetrating, but full of an expression which almost amounts to tenderness. William Russell, London Times.
2 days after Jefferson Davis left home, Abraham Lincoln set out from Springfield, Illinois, for his capital.
Here I have lived a quarter of a century and passed from a young to an old man. Here my children have been born and one is buried. I now leave, not knowing when or whether ever I may return, with the task before me greater than that which rested upon Washington. Without the assistance of that divine being who ever attended him, I cannot succeed. With that assistance, I cannot fail. To his care commending you, as I hope in your prayers you will commend me, I bid you an affectionate farewell.
En route to Washington, the president's train stopped at Cleveland, Buffalo, Albany, and New York. In Philadelphia, warned of plots to kill him, Lincoln declared he would rather be assassinated than see a single star removed from the American flag. 2 days later, he reluctantly canceled plans for a grand arrival in Washington and slipped into the Capitol by train at dawn, wrapped in a shawl and protected by 2 armed guards. Inauguration Day in Washington was cloudy and cold. A large, tense crowd gathered beneath the unfinished dome. Cannon guarded the Capitol grounds. Sharpshooters lined the roof. Lincoln promised not to interfere with slavery, but he denied the right of any state to secede, vowed to defend federal installations, and spoke directly to the South.
In your hands, my dissatisfied countrymen, and not in mine, is the momentous issue of civil war. The government will not assail you. You can have no conflict without being yourselves the aggressors. We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. The mystic cords of memory, stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart and hearthstone all over this broad land, will yet swell the chorus of the Union when again touched, as surely they will be, by the better angels of our nature.
I do not pretend to go to sleep. How can I? If Anderson does not accept terms at 4, the orders are he shall be fired upon. I count 4. St. Michael chimes. I begin to hope. The heavy booming of a cannon, I sprang out of bed and on my knees prostrate, I prayed as I have never prayed before.
The Civil War began at 4:30 a.m. on the 12th of April, 1861. General Pierre-Gustave Toutant Beauregard ordered his Confederate gunners to open fire on Fort Sumter, at that hour only a dark shape out in Charleston Harbor. Confederate Commander Beauregard was a gunner, so skilled as an artillery student at West Point that his instructor kept him on as an assistant for another year. That instructor was Major Robert Anderson, Union commander inside Fort Sumter.
All the pent-up hatred of the past months and years is voiced in the thunder of these cannon, and the people seem almost beside themselves in the exaltation of a freedom they deem already won.
The signal to fire the first shot was given by a civilian, Edmund Ruffin, a Virginia farmer and editor, who had preached secession for 20 years. Of course, he said, I was delighted to perform the service. "34 hours later, a white flag over the fort ended the bombardment. The only casualty had been a Confederate horse. It was a bloodless opening to the bloodiest war in American history.